friends, Sunwarper here. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I want to go over my process for creating a track using just samples, some beats, and some effects. If you normally work with instruments or MIDI, trying this type of beat making really lets you see how far you can take, push, and alter a sound with just some effects, time changes, things like that. So if you're currently struggling with a track or just looking for a new way to create, try this out and let me know what you think. The other huge bonus to this style of working is it can be as portable and modular as you'd like it to be. For example, today's song was made almost exclusively on a $5 app on my iPad, but it's also on iPhone. It's called Koala Sampler, and I have another video about beat making on this up here if you want to check it out, making a full beat from just this and using the microphone to sample a few instruments. From Koala, I sent all of the audio into the SP, which is really just acting as an effects box. I used bus 2 to have changing performative effects like cloud delay, isolator, and a filter, and then bus 3 and 4 have some sort of, I guess you could call it mastering on it, where I have a cassette shaping the tone a little bit, and then the compressor just balancing everything out. From there, I sent the audio into my DAW Logic, but you could use any, and I did some mastering. I really like this setup because you could take your iPad or phone anywhere, you can move the song between if you have both, and then you can either send the signal to here or send stems you make from Koala into your SP, where you could change them, alter them more, add beats, use the new TR rec mode to sequence, whatever you want to do. So I'm gonna go over how I chop up a sample in Koala, mix it largely in Koala, especially with this track, and then do the effects and some mixing in the SP. And finally, we'll go over how I master it in my DAW. I'll show you the settings that I used, the effects, all that good stuff. So let's check it out. All right, so this is the original sample. It came from Serato's Discord. They have a challenge called DiBiase's Diner. It's a lot of fun, you can check it out. I'll put a link in the description if you do want to head over there. This is what the sample sounded like. So from there, what I did, let me go over to the edit. Here you can see the full sample in Koala. The first thing that I did, and this is an extra feature you have to pay, I think it's $4 more for. It's an update to Koala called Samurai, and it allows auto chop. So if you hit auto chop, you can do transients where it senses a specific noise level and makes a chop at that level. That's a cool way to do it, but what I just did was equal chops. I think I did 8 chops maybe, and you can move these around to set it at the right transient or where you want it to start. You just hit chop when you're ready. It made these samples. So those are the chops that I made. This one was pitched down. This one I stretched to fit the BPM, which I made 145. Then I just added some drums that are stock to Koala. This B sample section is really a graveyard of sounds that I didn't use, but I did use this bass. Now that brings us to attack, release, and tone. So to do some EQ shaping in Koala, you're pretty limited. You have a tone section, which you can either cut high end or cut low end. So for this, I just toned down because I just wanted the bass in the background. These samples have a lot of bass on them. So this one I actually cut some of the high end. Most of them I cut a lot of low end from because I needed the bass to sit properly without conflicting with the bass sounds in these samples. And so that's something that's really important when you're working with samples. If you're adding bass, make sure you tone shape, cut low end from the samples if you don't need the bass in there. It also allows room for the kick to sit. All right, so moving on to the sequence. So I have a few different sequences. Basically, I start with just the chopped version of the sample. And then I move on to adding the bass and the drums. So if you have the Samurai update, you can go into a piano roll, and this is super helpful because you can see these dimmer sections, that's lower velocity. So if you go to vel, which is velocity, you can change the velocity of each note on the piano roll, which helps give dynamics, but also means you can have ghost notes when it comes to drums like snares and hi-hats and things like that. You can also make multiple copies of the same sequence, and you can change the ghost notes around to give some more variety and movement through the song. For these drums, some of them are on the grid, I quantized them, and then other ones are just slightly off the grid. I'm trying to find the ones that are off grid. Like there, you can see these hi-hats go completely off grid here. And that's just done by, you hit the BPM and you can turn on or turn off quantize. Some of the beats I had quantize on to give some grounding to the drums, and then the rest of it I shut the quantize off so it gives it some bounce and some swing. And you can of course also just turn the swing on right there. So that brings us to performance effects and bus effects on the SP. So we did all of the sample chopping, sound selection, and sequencing on Koala. There is a whole section of effects you can do here. I didn't even get into doing some tone shaping in Koala where you hit hold and you can alter the sound. Like, let's just turn this on really quick and I'll show you. And if you wanted to, you could hit resample loop, and then that will go in your samples and you can do more from there. So there is a lot of flexibility when it comes to effects within Koala. And you can even just do, like if you're playing this part, you've got effects right here that are very similar to the SP. You have a lot more on the SP, and that's partially why I use the SP. I also just like the more tactile nature, not touchscreen. The way I'm using the SP here, and it's different from how I usually use it, which is usually triggering samples. So what I'm using this for is really just the awesome effects that it comes with. It's an FX box. So I have external source on to allow the iPad's audio to come into here. Bus 2 is what I've got the audio coming into. So one of the main things I wanted to do was have isolator with just the mids, so it gives it that real tinny sound. You can shut it off and really get that huge hit from the kick and bass when it pops back in. I've got a filter where I have an LFO sync, and mainly I use that when I would switch to the second section, or the B section, which just has a different bass chord progression. Just to change it up a little bit. The main effect that I was using though is on bus 2 is cloud delay. This is awesome. It's with the SP's, I think, 2.0 update, which was the most recent update. They've done some smaller, like 2.1 updates and whatnot, but this was the big update where they added TR Rec. They added this awesome effect called cloud delay. The awesome part is it's got pitch shifting, so you're adding an octave up, so it gives it this kind of shimmering delay sound. So that's bus 2. You can modify it however you want it. There's tons of effects on here. Then I did some tone shaping, and I guess you could call it mastering with bus 3 and bus 4. I have bus 3 on cassette sim with a little bit of age to kind of warp the tone, wow and flutter up to 29, also warping the tone, and then some drive to kind of push and add some grit to everything. It also does compress the sound a little bit, and then it shapes the high end. So let's just hear it without. And then with. So it's not a massive change in sound, but you can definitely hear a difference. Then bus 4, I just have a compressor, and that's really just to kind of balance the levels a little bit and control the peaks. We're going for that gritty lo-fi beat sound, so I want it to be very compressed. So when it comes to effects, I really just did a simple master. You have EQ that drops some of the deep low end, shape the kick and bass a little bit. Then I've got a compressor which is doing very light compression, if it's even hitting 0.5 to 1 dB at the highest peaks only of the track. So most of the compression was handled from the SP. I didn't want to mess with that. I just wanted to control the peaks a little bit there. And the main thing with this compressor was I used the soft clip setting to add a little more distortion and grit to the sound. Finally, I just even out the sound and bring it up to competitive loudness levels. So for that, I use a limiter. So there you have it. That's my quick easy and portable sampling only workflow. You don't need to make it super complicated, and the great thing about sampling is you only need one or more pieces of equipment to do it. I mean, this is literally a $5 app, and even GarageBand has some of this functionality, and you can use your DAW if you've got one. For me, I get so caught up working in the DAW with hardware, things like that, that switching to this dawless setup, and more specifically, just taking a set sound, seeing how far you can take the sound from that original source and make something completely different. It's a lot of fun, and it really opens my mind to new ways of both sound design, but also sequencing and creating music. So I hope you'll check it out, and if you like these kinds of videos, consider subscribing. I post videos every Tuesday, and if you want to help support the channel, you can head to my new website, sunwarper.com. I'll put a link in the description. I have a blog where I put more detailed info about my videos, what I'm working on currently. But with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.